Hi everybody and welcome back to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. This post is from the subreddit Relationships and it's by user Z4Erdoz. Feel like I, 25 male, was treated poorly at a brunch by my girlfriend, 32 female, of 1 year. My girlfriend, let's call her Sonya, was going to a ladies' brunch this past weekend. She asked if I could pick her up. I said sure. She texted me and asked if I wanted to grab a drink with them and then we could go. I said I didn't want to intrude, but she insisted and said it was fine, so I joined. No one is talking to me when I get there, and when I try to join the conversation, I'm ignored. That one drink before we leave starts to turn into more. She has her arm around me but isn't looking or talking to me. I feel pretty excluded, so I excuse myself, say something came up and go to leave. I send her a quick text saying I feel like I'm intruding and that it's no problem, I'll pick her up later. She immediately calls me, insists that I come back, that I was imagining it, etc. So I do. Things do seem better at this point. People are looking at me and it seems whatever weirdness is over. I'm enjoying myself until I get back from the restroom. Immediately her friends do a hush hush. One of her friends tells me to excuse myself from the conversation. What? I'm sort of taken back, so I look at Sonya. She doesn't look at me. I feel crappy, like a child that's asked to sit in the corner or something, and I don't want to make a scene, so I stand up to leave. Then she says, no, just excuse the topic, don't listen for a bit. I'm just confused at this point, so I sit back down and pull out my phone. Obviously, I can't not listen, and they're talking about my girlfriend's ex. He's apparently missing in a foreign country, no one knows where he is. Sonya gets these weird calls from different numbers every couple of months. It's been 2 years. This is all mostly new to me, and the moment I start to hear her getting weird calls from him, I just get up and go to the bar. I didn't want to make a scene or anything, but talking about that in front of me without holding my hand, asking me if it was alright to dive into talking about her ex, or even looking at me at all, just seemed really humiliating and disrespectful. So 40 minutes go while I am at the bar. She texts me a sorry 20 minutes in, but it takes another 20 for her to stop the conversation. I've just been eating dinner at the bar and grabbing a drink when she comes over to apologize. I tell her that it's not okay, that I feel really hurt and angry, and that if the situation was reversed, she would be furious, which she agrees with. We go back and forth at the bar and then go home. On the way home, she's extremely defensive. She apologizes and then gets mad at me for not saying it's okay. She says she knows she made a mistake, but what else could she do? She blames me for leaving the conversation. She's getting angry, so I drop her off at home, say goodnight and go home. The next day, she is extremely apologetic. She says she was a horrible girlfriend. She says she has no idea why she didn't change the topic, look at me, or why it took her 40 minutes to realize that it was crappy to invite your boyfriend and then exclude him so you can talk about your ex. She says she barely slept last night because she has no idea why she acted like that, or why she got angry at me for expressing how I was feeling. We ended up having a long conversation where she listened to me without getting upset. She apologized profusely, she promised it wouldn't happen again, etc, etc. Unfortunately, now I can just feel all of my guard up. I know that in the grand scheme of a relationship, this wasn't some grand betrayal or anything, but it really feels like in such a simple, obvious moment to have your partner's back, she totally let me down. This isn't the first time I felt excluded around her friends either, but before I just chalked it up to my insecurities. Now I feel like I don't trust that she'll stand up for me or consider me at all when she's around her friends. I don't need her focus to be on me or anything, but when she's around my friends and I always make an active effort to include her in our conversations. If one of my friends told Sonya to excuse herself from the conversation, I would shut that friend down and tell him not to talk to her like that. If my friends were asking me about my ex while I was around, I would say, who cares, I have Sonya with me now, and make it clear to her that she was my priority. We've talked about all of this. I've communicated all of this. She has apologized profusely and she has promised that it won't happen again. She has made it clear that she understands how I'm feeling and I greatly appreciate that. But I don't feel safe around her friends and that trust needs to be earned again, which she has acknowledged. Unfortunately, in the meantime, I don't know how to feel better. I still feel hurt, I'm still kinda pissed, and I still feel worried. She was going on a bachelorette party weekend in Maui with these friends, and I wasn't worried before, but now, because I don't know that I can trust her around her friends, I start catastrophizing in my head about things going down at that party. I feel like I need something from her and I don't know what it is. Furthermore, I don't really know how I can get it outside of just more time with her friends and more evidence that I won't get repeatedly thrown under the bus in that situation. Well, that's just rude. Who invites you to brunch to just ignore you and disrespect you like that? I mean, excuse yourself from the conversation? Who the F do you think you are? I mean, your girlfriend had already asked you not to leave when you were going to leave the first time, which you should have done, but then this crap happens? You shouldn't have gone to the bar, Opie, and had waited 40 minutes for this crap. You should have gone home and told your girlfriend, you know what, it's absolutely cool that you go out with your friends and have all this girl time, it's absolutely fine of course, but if you invite me, then include me in the conversation or don't invite me, it's just disrespectful and rude. Honestly, OP, to me, this is a red flag and this would make me put the relationship under a microscope because if her friends don't respect you, then that's the kind of feedback she's getting from her friends. So if she does respect her friends, she might not respect you as well. So like you say, the only way that you can probably live with this thing is if you spend more time with her friends to gauge the situation. So before this bachelorette party, I would get your girlfriend to try to make a meetup or two and see how they treat you. And if they treat you poorly, then you bring it up with your girlfriend. If she doesn't stand up for you, then I would say that's your exit. I mean, she acknowledges that she was a bad girlfriend and that her whole attitude was crappy. But talk is cheap, so if she doesn't change her attitude, that to me is the deal breaker. And what do you guys think about all of this? What would you do if you were in OP's shoes? Let me know in the comment section, and now let's move on to the community comments to see what they said. Oblivion9122 says, all you can really do is see if she does it again. If she hangs out with her friends, I would possibly say no to going with her as they obviously don't respect you at all if they can talk about her ex with you there. If you do get roped into going and it happens again, I'd just get up and leave. And OP responds, yeah, I feel kind of silly for not just actually leaving. In my head, because I had agreed to give her a ride home, it didn't really occur to me. Thanks. Tallface says, her and her friend's rudeness aside, why hadn't she told you that he's been calling from random foreign numbers the entire time you've been together? Just seems like something you'd mentioned, even just like, isn't that effing weird? To then try to push you away from the table while they talk about it? I don't know, this is shady as F. And OP responds, her reasoning was, when is it appropriate to mention that I get unwanted calls from random numbers every few months from different countries? Edit, I made this way more confusing than I intended. I did not mean she was passing them off as spam calls. I meant that she knew how weird it was that he kept calling from different numbers and thought because it was her past, it was her stress to deal with. Captain Bignuts says, yeah, I'd have a big problem with this too. Does it have something to do with the age difference? Maybe she's been telling her friends she's got this hot young man candy she's been tapping and she wanted to show you off and it got out of hand? They basically treated you like a little boy and kicked you out of the big girls table and your girlfriend just avoided your gaze and let it happen. Pretty effing emasculating in my opinion. The more I think about it, the more pissed off I get for you. She asked you to pick her up, and then when you got there, they excluded and ran you off so they could talk about your girlfriend's ex-boyfriend while you cooled your heels at the bar for almost an hour? Sorry dude, I'm not really helping you here, just pointing out how it looks based on what you've written. Honestly, if it were me, it'd be really hard for me to come back from this. And OP responds, nah, the emotional solidarity is helpful, thanks. It's nice to know that I'm not crazy for feeling this way. Hell, from most of these comments, it seems like the consensus is that I'm underreacting. Additional information from OP's comments. It's just so out of character for her to treat me like that. Part of what I love about her is how usually in tune she is with me, how upfront she is about what she needs, and how receptive she is to my needs. I don't feel like this was big enough to break up over, and 99% of the time she makes me really happy. I just don't understand where this came from, and it makes me wonder if this is a fluke or if it's the real her. She said she realizes how awful it was. She has been very comprehensive and sincere in her apology. I'm just so thrown. However, she said that if something like this ever happened again, she'll shut down the topic. Also, the phone calls are definitely from him. Sorry if I wasn't clear about that. I wasn't following the conversation closely enough, so I was trying to convey my experience. One of the friends was friends with the ex before she was friends with Sonya, and that friend brought it up to try to get information. None of his friends know where he is or what happened. And this isn't the reason they broke up. She left him, then all this crap happened. She basically said that she's 100% over him, but they were together or engaged for almost a decade. And it's a little scary for someone who was a part of your life like that to be missing in such a weird way. I definitely need to ask her more about the calls. I think she did the thing that I understand where in her mind they were meaningless and she didn't want to worry me about them. I think the intention was positive, it just made what happened sting all the more. I really want to stay together, but I definitely can't forget this. I want to be in a place where I can forgive, but it is challenging right now. I think a lot of this can be chalked up to my boundaries. Obviously, her behavior wasn't good, but knowing her, I feel like if I had been more able to articulate what was wrong before it went too far, or just left when I said I was going to leave, this would be a very different story. Alright, well, the community agrees that this was not cool and that it might go on, that OP just needs to gauge the situation a little further, and OP gave us a bit more context regarding the phone calls and this whole thing that apparently was out of left field. So now, let's move on with the update to see what happened next, but of course before that, here's another one of my playlists for you to enjoy after this video. Now let's move on with that update. It is absolutely insane that this was only a month ago. It feels like so much longer. We broke up. I broke up with her last night. Things got better, then they got worse, then they got better again. Then we were around her friends again and I felt like she was a completely different person who didn't treat me as nicely. Again. I yelled at her in front of her friends, she yelled at me, and she gave me an ultimatum to spend the night with her or leave forever. I spent the night. Aw, man. Then, the next week I called to talk about how uncomfortable I was with that ultimatum and she immediately accused me of trying to break up with her. She then drove over to pick up her stuff without listening to me at all. She called me after she picked up her stuff to apologize. She then blamed me for everything that happened. Then she accused me of playing her and cheating on her. Then called me again to say how hurt she was that I didn't fight for her harder when she suggested breaking up. The next day, I sent her a breakup text because I felt like I couldn't do it in person. She drove over, said everything would change, things would be different, we worked so well together, not to let one mistake ruin what we had. I said, let me think on my own for a week. Obviously, she did not leave me alone that week for one day. She started with good mornings and pleasantries, which I asked her to stop for the week. Then about how hard it was the next day. Then the day after that about all the good times we had. Then the next day about how torturous what I was doing was to her and that she would never do this to me. That one stung a lot. All of that honestly made the decision easier. I don't think she was doing it intentionally, I just think she was in a lot of pain and thought this was her one chance to change my mind. So she threw all caution or fear of looking crazy and foolish to the wind. I don't know. Last night we sat down to dinner, which was pleasant. I made it clear we were done and said goodbye. Then, when I got home, she called me, begged me to come over one more time. She said she was terrified about being alone, said that we were perfect for each other, she loved me and she couldn't say goodbye. After about 30 minutes of us both sobbing into our phones, 25 minutes more than I should have let it gone on. I said I would say goodbye and hang up, and I did. I turned off my phone and woke up to 3 voicemails and 10 texts. ranging from how much trouble she was in to thanking me for our time together to asking if she could come over to say that she'll always love me. The last thing she sent me was a very rational, very honest apology, saying she won't contact me, she'll always love me, that she was sorry for hurting me, and that she never meant to. I know my last post really brought out a lot of anger toward her, and seeing it all written out like this, trust me, I'm aware of how manipulative and manic she was. It's just so difficult because it would switch on a dime. Sometimes we were great and it was so calm and safe, and then boom, I would have my guards raised higher than a skyscraper and we would be going at it. So when she leaves a voicemail that sounds more like that side of her, my heart just melts until I remember the other side, which isn't hard. I have so much tangible evidence of that other side now in texts and voicemails. It's also hard because in that dinner, we both acknowledged that it was mostly when she was around her friends, and that's something that in some part of my head feels fixable. It's just really hard. Rationally, I know that I would have to be a masochistic idiot to stay in this dynamic, yeah. But in my gut and in my heart, I feel like I just threw away something amazing, that this was it for me, that love is worth fighting for, that these fights were us challenging each other, and that we could have emerged on the other side as stronger, more complete, better people, and a fantastic couple. But like I said, I know that's not true. It's just really, really hard not to let my mind go there. It doesn't help that one of the main things she told me was that I think too much and to go with my heart. As is the case with most of the updates that end in breakups, I don't really know what I'm looking for here. The writing on the wall saying I did the right thing couldn't be clearer, but it sure as hell doesn't feel right now. Wow, OP, talk about hot and cold. It's a good thing you got out of there, man. That was turning into an emotionally abusive relationship if it wasn't already. And even though it was kind of like a messy escape, you got out of it, which is what's the positive here. So on that note, OP, here's wishing you the best in the future. Take care and thank you for sharing. Now, let's finish this video with a mood booster post. This post is from the subreddit Malicious Compliance, and it's by user Mandolin2712. You're sure it's mine? Fine, I'll keep it. This happened in 2014. I had just lost my job and was in the process of looking for a new one, but didn't have much money saved to pay bills in the meantime. So I asked my father if I could borrow $1,200 just to get me through to the next month, and I would pay him back as soon as I started working again. He sent the money, I paid my bills, and got a new job shortly after. As soon as I had the money to pay him back, I used my bank's online bill pay option to send him a check. I sent him a text and told him it was on the way and just assumed that was the end of it. Well, a week went by and he hadn't gotten it. I thought maybe it took a few days for the bank to actually process the bill pay option because I hadn't used it before. So I asked him to just wait a few more days and see if it came. Several days later, it still hadn't gotten there. So I called the bank and asked them, and they told me I could stop payment on it for free. So I did. Then I wrote a personal check and mailed it. I just assumed something went wrong with the online bill pay. About 2 months later, I got a check in the mail from a medical facility in the state my father lives in for $1,200. I called and asked them about it, and they told me on a recorded line that it was an overpayment on an account my father had with them, and it was a legitimate check and was mine to keep. At that point, I didn't associate it with the bill pay thing I had tried to do a couple of months before. I did call my father to ask about his accounts with this place because there was no reason they should have my address to be sending me an overpayment if he had actually made one. He had no idea what was going on because he hadn't used that facility in a few years. I looked up the place on Google and finally it dawned on me what had happened. My father's address was on Sandalwood Drive at that point in time, but when I typed it into bill pay, my phone auto-corrected it to Sandalwood, and it just happened to be the same numerical address, and because my father's name was listed as the payee, they erroneously attempted to apply it to his account. So that's where my check had gone. I tried to call them again and explained what happened, and the lady on the phone was extremely rude to me. She told me, "I've already talked to you about this. I don't know why you're calling again. We sent you what we owed you. This account is settled and we will not be talking about it again." Again, this isn't a recorded line. I asked if she was sure they owed me this money. She practically shouted, "Yes!" And I just smiled and hung up the phone. I deposited the check into my bank that day. They didn't try to call me back until about 6 weeks later. I had been wondering how long it would take. The person who called me was a different lady, and she called to tell me that a mistake had been made and that I owed them $1,200. I told her she was misinformed and she should go back and listen to the recorded calls I had made to their office and give her the dates. I had been reassured multiple times that the money was mine and that I was in the clear to cash that check. And then I hung up. I haven't heard a single thing about it since then. Well, OP, you tried to give it back several times and they told you to keep it, so I guess that's on them. Thanks for sharing, OP. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. Now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, I assume that you like these stories that I'm reading out, so here are a couple more that you might enjoy. And if you don't have any time to watch another story right now, save it for later, and also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.